I'm Celeste from the Arachne Project. I'm a creative writing coach and I specialize in fiction, personal growth, and spiritual transformation. And one of the things that people ask me when I first start working with a new client or when I get talking with a new friend about writing is what craft books I learned from and what craft books I recommend to my clients. And the truth is that I don't have a lot of craft books. I do have a shelf behind me. I have a bunch on the top shelf. The top shelf is craft books, and then the next shelf down is books about editing. But that's really all the books that I have about writing because I didn't really learn from a book. And it's okay if you are learning from books, and it's okay if you like to learn from books. I definitely, the ones that I have collected are a result of being asked for more craft books. People always want to know my opinion about something, because that's just how writers talk to each other. Not because I'm like an expert on everything. It's really just because we like to share information and we like to talk about whether something worked for us or not and how we liked it. So I do buy some, read them, and chat with people about them. But for the most part, I don't recommend a lot of craft books, and that's just because I don't use a lot of them. However, that said, I do have 3 for you today that I have definitely learned a lot from and that I definitely recommend to clients if they're struggling with any of these issues that I'm going to talk about today. So, we're going to start off with plot, because plot is an area where writers have problems, and it's an area where I had a problem. When I first started going to graduate school, I was what you would call a pantser. I'm still a pantser. I thought I could learn that out of myself by going to graduate school, and it did not happen, just to let you know. But what did happen was I learned more about plot structure while I was there because I did study it in depth for 2 years. And this book was recommended to me by one of my mentors during a workshop when I asked a question about what books she recommended. So I picked up the book. I read, I actually got the screenwriting version first, and I didn't like it at that time. And then later I found this one and picked it up, and I do like this one. So if you have the other one and you're wondering if you should buy this one, I think this is worth it if you write novels. I prefer this for writing novels. Obviously, if you're a screenwriter, you want to go with the other one, I think. So what is Save the Cat Writes a Novel? So this is basically a 3-act structure that utilizes 15 beats. A story beat is a part of the story where something happens in the story, and it's like a turning point in the story, or it's either a turning point or a piece of information that needs to happen. So basically, the way that I use Save the Cat, because you can use this as a formula for writing. You can. I know people who do it. But you can also use it as a little bit of a roadmap, which is more how I use it during the rewriting process. I have used it heavily for the piece I'm working on right now because I'm weaving 3 intricate plot lines, and I want to make sure that I don't miss anything because it's very easy to miss something when you're going from character to character to character. So what you would do if you wanted to use this as a formula is you would basically plan your chapters based on the story beats, and you would look at they give you recommendations in the screenwriting one for which page something should happen on, and in this book they'll tell you this should happen in the first 5% of the novel, this should happen by this point of the novel, this should happen by this point. And basically what it lies out for you is all of the really critical, essential pieces of storytelling that need to go into a story so that people don't go, what the heck is going on here? Basically, if you skip any of these pieces, what I think, as someone who studied literature and creative writing, what I think is that these are they're spoken because they're here, but they're unspoken parts of story. And you want to make sure that you include them so that your reader is satisfied. So that your reader has all the information they need, and so that they're satisfied by the unfurling of that plot. So, just as an example, in the first act, we have five. We have I'm on the second one here, but we have five different story beats. And the first one is the opening image. And the opening image is basically your character's ordinary world. If you're familiar with the story structure called the hero's journey, then you're familiar with the ordinary world. So the opening image, the theme stated is the second one. That's where you basically tell what this story is about. And you're not really going to tell it, you're going to show it. It should take a little bit of time to get that on the page. It might be there might be like an actual sentence where the narrator or the main character has a thought or does something or says something, and that might be the theme stated. It can be very, very, very upfront. And you might not know that when you first start writing your book. I just want to make clear that if you don't know what your theme is when you start writing a book, it's okay. A lot of people don't know when they first start. But if you do know, this is where it goes. And certainly by the time you are done writing, you should know what your theme is, and you should make sure that it's wherever they say it should go. So further into the first act, you have your catalyst. That's like where your main character gets kind of set off on their journey. Something happens that triggers their journey, that triggers the plot to develop further. Without this catalyst, there would be no stories. It would just be a series of disconnected scenes, which is an amateur mistake that a lot of writers make when they're first starting to write. And again, I went through that stage too. We all do. So again, I don't recommend using this book necessarily as a formula, although you certainly can. If you're a pantser like me and you're sort of against plotting, I welcome you to pick this book up. I actually think that this is a really great way to use this book. Pick this book up, give it a really good read, give it a good study, kind of study the beats, study your own writing, or at first you should study like a book that you're reading. Like when you're reading a book, like kind of put sticky notes in the book and be like, okay, that was the catalyst. Okay, that's the debate. Start like thinking in terms of this when you're reading, and then when you're writing, just set it aside. Because you don't need to be, one of the things that can be really clunky when you're reading someone else's books is that, it appears so formulaic, like they go from here to here to here, and you're like, oh, that was exactly like that other story. You don't want it to be telegraphed quite that clearly. And so it's okay if you are a pantser, or if you're a really, kind of independent person who doesn't like to use formulas. It's fine to put this in your brain and just kind of let it be there and running in the background, and then just set the book aside and not look at it while you're writing. I would just check in on it during the rewriting stage to make sure that you haven't missed something. Sometimes when you're feeling, another way that I use it is when I'm rewriting, I'll be like, gee, that part of the story was really flat. And I'll look and I'll go, what's missing there? What should be there and what's missing there? And then I'll go through and I'll identify the beats that are actually in my story, and I'll go, oh, I'm missing a beat, or oh, I put it there but I didn't develop it. Like I should have taken, several pages or several chapters to develop that, and I really hurried through it, or it fell flat and it's not there. So it's a really good way to kind of check yourself. Not necessarily as a recipe that you have to follow to create a story that someone else wants to read. But there is kind of, I think there's like a science to storytelling, I really do. I think that people's expectations, they certainly come to us because of what we're used to and what we've read, but I also think that there's a certain sort of journey to transformation. Being a transformational coach, there's a process that I see people go through to change themselves, and we want to see those represented in a story structure. The second book that I want to recommend, I'm going to link these, by the way, in the description. I'm going to put Amazon links because that's a little bit easier for everybody to kind of go over there. But I just want to state that I'm not, if you don't want to shop at Amazon, you shouldn't. Go to a local bookstore, give them your support. They really need your support right now. As I'm filming this, it's Pandemicville, and a lot of small businesses are struggling. So I've started making sure that, I'm not lazy and trying to go over to my bookstore and buy things more often. We're trying to go to a place and order and have it delivered locally if we can. So anyway, I just wanted to put that little disclaimer. They're also not going to be affiliate links, so I don't make any money if you order through my link. Don't worry about that. The second book that I want to recommend is Goal, Motivation, and Conflict. The Building Blocks of Good Fiction. The author is Dixon. Okay. This is one of my favorite writing books, and it's very hard to find. Again, I'll put a link in the description if I can find it. You're probably going to have to buy it used somewhere. You might even have to stock it a little bit. I had to stock it when I bought it years back, but I don't know, it might be more available now. At any rate, Goal, Motivation, and Conflict. This is a character development book. This book will teach you how to do a character development journey. And one of the things, again, that sort of falls flat when you read a book sometimes is you won't be satisfied with a character's growth, or that a character's problems won't seem really urgent enough to kind of propel you through the story. Or, conversely, the character's problem might be over the top. And you're like, really? Have you ever read a book where you were like, really? Everything was super dramatic, and you were just like, I just don't believe any of this. It's not believable. So this is a book about how to create real goals, real motivations, and real conflicts. So the goal is what your character wants. Every character has a want. Your main characters have a want, and all of your secondary characters do. Your villain also does. All the characters in the story have a want, and you may not telegraph them on the page explicitly, especially for secondary characters or people that just walk on and walk off. But there should be some intention behind you writing every character, and certainly your point of view characters. Any character that's having a character arc needs a goal. They need a desire. They got to have something that they want, and they've got to have. It's got to be something internal. There's something they want inside for their internal growth, and then there's got to be something external that they want. Sometimes those things can be pretty much the same thing, or really close to the same thing, and sometimes what the character wants externally is not what they want internally, and that's part of the struggle, is them beginning to understand themselves and figuring out what it is that they actually, why do I want this? Oh, it's not because of why I thought. Sometimes that is part of a character journey. Motivation is the why. That's why they want it. It's their driving force behind their desires. So the book goes into a really good explanation of, how to create, what are the whys. They actually do case studies in here, of different stories. So if you're curious about how, it's better if you have read the stories, but they're pretty easy to find stories in here. So the last piece is conflict, and the conflict is that's the thing that's why they can't have the thing they want, because there's, again, no story. There's no actual story if there's no conflict. Conflict is what makes a story interesting. It's why we read. It's actually, and as a coach, it's why people come to coaching. Nobody comes to coaching who thinks they have things all figured out. People show up, and they're usually kind of sheepish, like, I have a problem. And I'm like, tell me about it, because I have problems too, One of the things about coaching is that we're all dealing with problems. and a lot of people are like hiding it. They're showing that shiny like social media image. So your character might be showing that kind of a face to the world, but inside they might be full of conflict. Or in some books, like there's a lot of external conflict and not a lot of internal conflict. So again, the internal and the external both play into that. And this book talks about how. And again, it's really useful if you want to study character development. Again, I don't necessarily recommend that you sit down and use this as a formula, although you can. It's just a way to start thinking about stories when you are watching a movie, when you're reading a book, or when you are writing. So I definitely recommend this one if you can get your hands on it. This is a treasure, and I do recommend it all the time. It's an oldie but a goodie. I haven't found a lot of character development books that can beat this, to be honest. I have a few on my shelf, but this just comes back time and time again as like the standard for me. I really like it. The last book that I want to recommend is called The First 5 Pages by Noah Lukeman. This book is about staying out of the rejection pile, okay? Which we know is easier said than done. So what this book talks about, is how to make sure your first 5 pages are grabbing, because a lot of times we're getting judged on our first 5 pages, right? We send in that 5-page sample, and they're going to send you a rejection letter or a request for more based on your first 5 pages. So it's about how to make sure that you have rooted out those first 5 pages for all of the kinds of prose issues and craft issues that can be in fiction. And it's also about making sure that all of the plot elements are planted in the right place in the first 5 pages, and make sure that there's a hint of a character to develop in the first 5 pages. Because one of the mistakes that people sometimes make is having a character enter the story with absolutely no intention. I do theater, and one of the things that we talk about in theater is you walk on stage with intention. You don't just walk on and start delivering your lines. Every character, even if you're in a scene where you're not speaking, you walk on stage with an intention. Your character is going somewhere, even if you're a background character. You show that intention with your actions and the things that you do. You don't necessarily say it. My intention might be that I'm like, if it's your main character, their intention on the page might be like, well, I'll tell you what it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be waking up. Those are like kind of like overdone first pages. People always show somebody waking up from a dream, or driving in the car, or looking in the mirror. Those kinds of things are cliche first pages, and you don't want to have them in there. So that's definitely something to avoid. Some examples of chapters in this book, just so you kind of know what it's about. There is a chapter about presentation, where they talk about how to format your submission so that, now this is again a little bit of an old book, so they're talking about the paper, whereas now we have email submissions. So there's some things that you can just sort of ignore, but spacing still matters. And then we have a chapter about adjectives and adverbs. I'm not a person who thinks that you shouldn't use adjectives and adverbs, and neither is this author. It's more about placement and overuse and things like that, and how do you strike a balance. Never use an adjective when a better noun works. Never use an adverb when a better verb works. Those are the kinds of rules. And the reason that we do that is not to limit you. If you use an adverb, it's not the end of the world. The reason that we talk about that is because anytime, like, brevity wins, if you're able to create a picture with less words, it has more impact. And that's It's just kind of psychological. Another chapter in this book is about dialogue. There's a chapter about dialogue, and it will tell you how to do identifiers like he said, she said. Sometimes those are called tags as well, dialogue tags. We'll talk about how to create character through dialogue, because that's ultimately how we show character. Sometimes is we show them talking, and the way they talk and how they talk and who they talk to says something about who they are. Another chapter, there's a chapter on melodrama, which is like one of my favorite things because I was a super melodramatic writer when I first started writing novels. And sometimes I still can do that sometimes. I tend to think that I've gotten better at it, and I kind of have found the line as I've improved. But it's definitely something that I have to watch out for, and I know that when I'm reading my own writing, I'm looking out for it. And if a critique partner nails me on melodrama, then I know that I need to redo it, because that is a problem that I know that I have. Hard to follow. Again, it's about dialogue. Is it hard to follow? Do you know who said what? So there's like a chapter on showing versus telling. There's a chapter on hooks. It's just a really good overall. It's a short book. It's not very thick at all. And it's a really good primer on what can keep you out of the yes pile. You want it where you want to be. You want to be in the pile where the editor or agent is saying yes. And again, like a book like the first 5 pages, this is the kind of thing where as a coach, I enjoy working. I like looking at someone's first 5 pages because I feel like I can always help them. If I can help them clean up their first 5 pages, I can help them get more requests, which makes me feel really good as a coach, and it makes them feel really great as a writer. And then if they apply the same lessons that I teach them in the first 5 pages, if they start applying those lessons throughout their manuscript, they're going to see improvements in the whole manuscript. So that's a really cool thing. So, again, I will link those books in the description, and I would love to hear in the comments which craft books you love and recommend. And if you guys want me to do any more of these kinds of writing videos, I will be doing more of them, first of all. But if there's anything particular that you want me to talk about, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to do a video for you that you request. And I guess that's all I've got for today. So I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.